Braves DH Marcell Ozuna should finish in the top 3 or 4 in National League MVP voting. But when looking at the team's MVP, does Chris Sale have a case? We'll break it down on this episode of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your home for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh. You can follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. And Christian, we're going to get into whatever that was last night. We're going to get into the wild card standings right now, what you're looking at this week. We could go to Washington for 2 games. But before we do all of that, there was a great conversation I got a little bit of where some folks were debating who is this team's MVP for 2024? Is it Marcell Ozuna, like we all assumed all year? Or does Chris Sale have a case that he should be this team's MVP? So we're going to break down both of these guys and the argument that they should be the MVP of the Atlanta Braves in 2024. And I want to do Marcell Ozuna first, because he's been the guy all season we thought would be the MVP. He was in the running for Triple Crown for a while. He's in a bit of a power slump right now. He's not going to catch Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani's in the 50s for homers right now. But, heading towards 50. 37 home runs, batting .304 with a .938 OPS for Marcell Ozuna. Has not missed a game, has played in all 144 games for the team. Him and Matt Olson are the only two who have done that. What is the 30-second, or I guess the short case for Marcell Ozuna as the MVP for the Braves this season?
As you mentioned, with the injury concerns that the Braves have had all year, him playing 144 games might be his most impressive stat. But getting those home runs and keeping up with Shohei Ohtani and the rest of the National League to being at the very top, he has been the offensive MVP for sure. There's no doubt in my mind about it. Without Marcell Ozuna this year, the Braves offense would be even worse than it is right now, and we would not even be remotely talking about them being in the playoff race. So I think that's a very strong case for him to be the team MVP.
Yeah. And when you say that, I don't necessarily know if everybody understands exactly how big of an offensive load Marcell has carried. Yes, we're like, oh yeah, he's batting .300. He's doing really well. But listen to this. Marcell Ozuna has 37 homers. The team as a whole has hit 182. So Marcell Ozuna has hit more than 20% of Atlanta's home runs this year. Okay. You look at RBI. The team has 582. Marcell Ozuna has 98 of those. He is 2 away from a second consecutive 100 RBI season. He's also 3 homers away from a second consecutive 40 home run season. But his 98 RBI is 17% of this team's total. Just about 1 in every 6 RBI that this team has gotten this year was from Marcell Ozuna. And then of the runs scored, we don't think of Marcell Ozuna as a very fast guy, right? He's not very quick on his feet. But of the 610 runs this team has scored, 86 were scored by Marcell Ozuna. 14% of this team's runs. So between 1 in every 6 and 1 in every 7 runs. So if you subtract him from the Atlanta Braves, if he got hurt in game 1 and missed the entire season, that would be the only real above average performer that this team has had. If you look at this team from a OPS plus standpoint right now, Marcell Ozuna plus 158. After him, Matt Olson's at plus 107 somehow. You've got Travis d'Arnaud's at a 109. Austin Riley's at a 116. You have a couple guys who have been barely over average, right? And then Marcell Ozuna is the only consistent performer in that entire group. It's a big deal that he's been there. And without him, I think your record is way worse than 78 and 66.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying that the Washington Nationals would pass the Atlanta Braves. I don't know if I'm going to go 64 wins right now, but I would say being at 70 wins right now would be a stretch. I think that many games without Marcell Ozuna doing what he's doing right now, the Braves would be in really big trouble. Like we're talking like they're going to be as good as the Cincinnati Reds right now if they don't have Marcell Ozuna. He is a huge reason, if not the reason, why they are still in playoff contention, Lindsay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there is a very strong case for him to be not only the team MVP, but in really any other season that doesn't have Shohei Ohtani acting like a robot, being the National League MVP.
Yeah. And I do think it's worth, we were talking all year about how the Braves homer production was down, and that's rebounded somewhat. 182 homers is fifth, tied for fifth in all of baseball, right? You're just behind the Yankees, Orioles, Dodgers, and Diamondbacks. You take out his 37 homers and you drop to the bottom half of the league. The average in baseball is 162. We're already frustrated enough that this team's only 20 homers over the average for baseball. You take him out and you are down there with, doing math in my head real quick, you're down there with the likes of the St. Louis Cardinals, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Detroit Tigers. That's where you are from a homer perspective if you don't have Marcell Ozuna. RBI run, same thing. You're already below average on RBI. The league average is 608. If you take out his 98, you are the second worst team in baseball in RBI, only above the Chicago White Sox. You're only the second team below 500 RBI. And granted, that's not going to be the exact one-for-one trade. Whoever takes his spot as DH is going to hit some RBI, but who on this team has really produced as an injury replacement, right? Just even runs without Marcell Ozuna, you're already below average at 610. League average is 637. Again, you take out his 86 runs and you're down there in the low fives. You're below the Miami Marlins, you're above the Chicago White Sox, and that's it. So from a run scoring perspective, you've been a below average offense this year. If you remove him, you're one of the worst in baseball. And I think that right there is an argument that Marcell Ozuna should be the team's MVP.
It sounds like a lot of most valuable player conversation, if you ask me, Lindsay. Sounds
Yeah,
like it.
it absolutely does. The classic definition of what MVP should be. But I do want to get to Chris Sale, though, because Chris Sale is in a similar situation of, if you did not have Chris Sale, where would you be? So reminder here, he is 16-3, 2.38 ERA, 213 strikeouts. All three of those categories leads the National League. He is by far the favorite for an NL Cy Young. It is more likely than not that he will win it, barring some sort of absurd collapse in the final month combined with Zach Wheeler throwing 2 perfect games or something nuts like that. The argument for Chris Sale to be your MVP, I think, comes down to this. You were hot early in the year. You were 19-9 at the end of April. Since then, you have not had any month where you were better than 3 games over 500. August, you were 16-13. You've had some months where you were below 500. You were 13-14 in May. You were 12-13 in July. The team is I used a stat yesterday. The team is 20-7 in games that Chris Sale has started. Games that any other pitcher has been on the mound to open the game. Atlanta is 58-59. So your early, when you had most of the roster healthy, your early offensive surge got you over 500. And it can be argued that only Chris Sale is the reason you are still over 500, because you have won a majority of his starts versus everybody else. And we even saw the month of August, you had that absurd stretch of quality, of great outings from Brave staff, and you only went 16-13. And in September, 7 of those 8 starts have been 3 innings or 3 runs or less from your starter, and you're only 4-4 with a run differential of +1. So it feels Chris Sale is the only reason you are even in playoff contention at this point in the year.
I think those are all really good reasons for you to say why Chris Sale can be the team MVP. I'll even add some more for you, Lindsay.
Okay.
And starts following a loss. MLB Network actually went on a conversation yesterday about this, so it's actually really good timing. They mentioned that Chris Sale should be in the National League MVP conversation, which I do think as well. I think
I
both
think he
Sale
will.
and Ozuna should be when the season's over, they both should finish top 5. I'm not afraid to say that. I think they both should be top 5 in the National League MVP. But in starts following a loss, they're 7-1, 1.32 ERA in those 12 games started for Chris Sale. And since the start of July, he is 6-0 with a 1.85 ERA in those 12 games started. There is a lot of really good reasons why Chris Sale should be team MVP. It's tough for me to decide which side. It's really nice that you have both of these guys, and it really makes you wonder, Lindsay, if this team was completely healthy, where they would be in the standings, where they would be when you have this production from Marcell Ozuna, this production for Chris Sale, which you got to know. There's no way that anybody expected Chris Sale to do what he's doing right now. I think they expected maybe some sort of improvement because he was finally healthy, but not this. And it's really impressive to see.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have expected Chris Sale to have an ERA under 2 over the summer. Like I don't
Right.
quite think we would have been there. The what would this team do if everybody was healthy conversation, we'll have to hold that for probably the
Yep.
off day. I think it's an off day on Thursday. That's an interesting conversation because top of my head, if Spencer Strider's in this rotation and you have Strider, Sale, Lopez, Morton, Freed, you probably don't have Schwellenbach come up, right? He came up out of emergency.
Yeah.
You do use extra guys from AAA, but you're probably using your Bryce Elders, your other guys, your spot start guys. Maybe you bring Schoenbach up for 1 or 2, but he doesn't have a long-term rotation spot. So there is pros and cons on this. Obviously, you want Spencer Strider in a rotation, but it's an interesting thought experiment to look at. Maybe we'll do that later this week. If you want to hear that show, let us know in the comments down below. I do think he's going to get down ballot MVP votes. Going back and looking, the best that he's finished. So he had that streak of 7 straight Cy Young finishes. He was at 6th, and then he had 2 5th place, 2 4th place, a 3rd place, and a 2nd place Cy Young finish. His first year in Boston, 17-8, 290 ERA, and a league-leading 214 in the 3rd innings. He led baseball with 308 strikeouts, which is absurd, at 12.9 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is bonkers. I've never seen a number that high for a starting pitcher. He was the runner-up for Cy Young, and he was the 9th place finisher. He was the 9th place finisher in MVP, and he was beat out for Cy Young by Corey Kluber, who went 18-4 with a 2.25 ERA, had 5 complete games, including 3 shutouts over 203 and 2/3 innings, with a whip of like below 0.9. So it took an amazing year for Corey Kluber. Corey Kluber was almost worth 8 WAR that year.
Insane.
If that kind of tells you, one, we forgot how good Corey Kluber was. And
Yeah, he
even
did
then,
shortstop that year.
he was only a 7th place finisher in the MVP voting, while Sale was 9th. So I feel like top 10 is likely for Sale. I don't know if voters will give him top 5, although there's not a lot of really great pitchers in the National League. It is, I want to say Sale's maybe the only guy with an ERA under 3 or who's qualified.
When I'm thinking of National League MVP, who would be ahead of him right now in top 5 votes, you obviously got Otani, Ozuna, and Lindor, right?
Lindor. Yep.
I think he should be above Marte and he should be above Ellie De La Cruz. And those are usually, when you look at the odds, they're sitting in 4th and 5th place. We're talking about a guy who is potentially going to win the Triple Crown as well this year. So
He leads in all 3.
I think that he should be, in my mind, 4th for 5th votes without question. I think he should finish at least 4th for 5th.
Yeah, I think he probably should. I think I'm going to officially predict he'll be top 10, but not top 5. But
Sure.
we have clearly not actually settled the conversation or the debate of who should be Atlanta's MVP. Let us know what you think. Is Chris Sale Atlanta's MVP? Is Marcell Ozuna Atlanta's MVP? Or are you wanting to take I'm going to say the coward's way out and just do co-MVPs? Let us know what you think. Let us know in the comments down below. In just a minute, let's briefly talk about what happened last night. I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't want to get mad. Let's briefly talk about what happened last night, what the wild card pitcher looks like, and what Atlanta's up to this week on the road trip. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. I'm Lindsay Crosby. He's Christian Rauh. So last night's 1-0 loss to the Cincinnati Reds. I wrote about this, obviously, doing our takeaways like we always do on bravestoday.com, the Braves Today Substack. And it's just really hard to reconcile the idea of Atlanta being favored to make the postseason, which I got an email from a not-to-be-named sportsbook yesterday afternoon. We're not going to say their name because they're not paying us for that. If you want to sponsor the show, books, reach out and let us know. And they had Atlanta, this is prior to yesterday's game, they had Atlanta at minus 275 to make the playoffs, and the Mets minus 140 to miss the playoffs. So Atlanta's odds minus 275 comes out to 73.3% chance. Minus 140 for the Mets comes out to 58.3% chance. But when you look at what happened yesterday, Charlie Morton gets one run in 6 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 2 walks. I think it's had seven strikeouts there. And he takes a loss because Nick Martinez only allows 2 hits to Atlanta in 7 innings, including retiring 16 consecutive hitters. And I'll point out, I don't really think that second hit should have been a base hit. Ground ball to Noelvi Marte at third base. He throws wide of the bag at first. Ty France makes the catch and tries to swipe and tag Matt Olson. Olson has a little skip jump thing to get out of the way and touches the base. Probably should have been an error. They're at home. I see that why that's a base hit. It doesn't feel like this offense that just absolutely failed to show up. They had 3 men on base in the entire game. It doesn't feel like this offense is going to get you in the postseason, no matter how good your pitching staff is.
Yeah, you're talking 2 hits here in the game, and there was no opportunities as well. And you mentioned that that second hit shouldn't even been a hit. 7 strikeouts they got in the game. Okay, fine. That's honestly about average for this team. But 2 hits is just not enough. They had no opportunities. They were 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position. They only had 3 men on base the entire time. That's just can't happen. They got to do something, and they're wasting away all these great pitching performances that we're seeing from this Braves pitching staff. Morton had another really good outing that we've seen from him. There's been moments where Charlie Morton hasn't been his best, but that hasn't been lately. And he did another really good outing. And the bullpen did good again without using your big bullpen pieces. They had some really nice performances. Aaron Bummer, 2 strikeouts in his inning. Grant Holmes, 3 strikeouts in his inning. He let up a couple hits, sure, but they didn't bring in any runs. You got to really love what you're seeing from this Braves pitching staff.
Yeah, it's very frustrating to see this kind of offense. And I know that you've had a ton of injuries. I know guys are out. Whit Merrifield's out right now and all of that, but this isn't good enough. And I don't know at this point what it's going to take to fix this, but it's incredibly frustrating. I do know that I'm not super optimistic about facing the Washington Nationals for 2 games this week, simply because you look at how you've been against them, the season series here. They have won 7 games. You have won 4. So it'll be the first time you have lost the season series. If you don't, no matter what, you can't win the season series here. But you went 8-5 against them last year. You went 14-5 against them in 22. The best you can do is 7-6 this year. And even the pitching matchups, I'm not super confident in. It's Ronaldo Lopez versus Mackenzie Gore on Tuesday night. And Lopez has done good against them in his 2 starts, a total of 3 runs allowed, 14 strikeouts in 12 innings. But Mackenzie Gore, if I remember this right, Mackenzie Gore had a shutout for, I think, almost 7 innings or 6 innings against Atlanta last time out. He's made 3 starts this year and has allowed a total of 3 earned runs to Atlanta in 16 1/3 innings with 21 strikeouts. You don't feel good about that. What can this team do to stop left-handed Mackenzie Gore from just mowing them down right at this point?
Have a pulse, something. They got to have something. Just anything better than what they had yesterday, because that's really where you need to be. If you can find a way to just have some kind of offensive production, Lindsay, I think you can jumpstart it because your pitching has been so good. So just have
Yeah.
a pulse, get on base, and find a way to score some runs. It just got to be that simple. They just got to go back to the fundamentals, whatever it is. They just got to figure it out. They got to grind. They got to know that their season's on the line. And I know they're well aware that they know that they're out of the postseason. They know they're paying attention, but this is a different beast than last season. And it's a different beast in 2021, even though they're dealing with those same type of injuries. But right now, they're in a really tough spot. If this offense doesn't take off, they're going to be watching the postseason from their couches, not from the field.
Yeah. Believe it or not, game 1's not the one I'm worried about. It's game 2. Max Fried versus Jake Irvin. Fried's been good against them. He faced them in May, late May, 8 innings, 8 shutout innings, 7 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts through 103 pitches. In his last 5 games against them, he's 4-0 with a 2.70 ERA. But Jake Irvin is 9-12 with a 4.28 ERA on the year. Okay. He gave up 7 runs to the Cubs and 6 runs to the Pirates his last 2 times out. But he's making his 4th start against Atlanta. And in his first 3, he's combined for 17 1/3 innings with 2 runs allowed against 17 strikeouts. Atlanta just has, and I think the 2 runs he gave up in August was 1 home run. A guy was on base, 1 home run, and that's all he's given up to Atlanta all year. And I don't know why. I mean, this dude has a 7.17 ERA in his last 7 starts. But for some reason, he's owned Atlanta 3 times now. And here's the other scary thing. 5 teams this year have thrown shutouts versus the Braves when Max Fried has started, right? It's been a total of, it's terrifying, right? Robert Suarez did it for the Baltimore Orioles. Brandon Pfaadt did it for the Diamondbacks. Eduardo Cabrera did it for the Marlins. Logan Webb and Zach Wheeler. Is Jake Irvin going to throw a shutout? You hope not. He made it 9 2/3 innings in his last 2 games with 13 runs allowed, but it just feels like that's where this team is at this point, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, there hasn't been an outing here's maybe a bright side. There hasn't been an outing since July 4th where he had an 8-inning shutout that he's allowed at least 2 runs. So maybe we get some kind of good from the outing against Irving. But I will say this, if he goes on an 8-inning shutout or something like that against the Braves on Wednesday, Lindsay, I think that might be the time to actually start sticking the fork in this Braves team on the off day. We might not be able to have that fun conversation. We might have to write a eulogy.
Yeah. All right. Final prediction on this series. I'm going to go 1-1. I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why, but I'm going 1-1. I just feel like this team understands they cannot lose both games and have a chance of playing in October. So I'm going to say 1-1.
I'm going to give you my last optimistic hope for the Atlanta Braves in 2024. That's where I'm at right now. I'm on the last wick of the candle. I'm going to go for the sweep because I think the offense will figure it out. That's where my hope is. But if I'm wrong, we know what to do on Thursday.
We know what to do on Thursday. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, September 10th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Also, go subscribe to the podcast feed. That'd be great. It's a newer feed. We're trying to build it up a little bit. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. You can follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. And you can find all of our written work at bravestoday.com. And until next time, this has been Braves Today.